The conference room fell silent when Maren Walsh slammed her phone face down on the mahogany table, tears streaming down her face as she stared at the man across from her, who had just flown 600 miles to see her for 48 hours. "I can't do this anymore, Nathan," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I can't do long distance. I thought I could, but I can't. Every time you leave, it feels like someone is ripping my heart out of my chest. I can't breathe when you're gone. I can't sleep. I can't function. This isn't living." Nathan Forrester, CEO of Forrester Manufacturing, the largest custom furniture manufacturer in the Pacific Northwest, felt his world tilt on its axis. He had known this conversation was coming. He had seen it in her eyes for weeks now. The way she pulled away slightly before he left. The way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes anymore. The way she held him too tightly at airports as if memorizing the feel of him. They had met 6 months ago at a trade show in Denver. Neutral territory for both of them. She was representing her family's boutique hotel chain based in Charleston, South Carolina, looking for unique furnishings for their newest property. He was there showcasing his company's custom work. Their booth had been directly across from hers, and for 3 days they had exchanged glances, smiles, and finally, on the last night, conversation over drinks that turned into dinner that turned into walking the city streets until 3 in the morning. He had never believed in love at first sight until Maren. She was beautiful in an understated way, with warm brown eyes that sparkled when she laughed, dark hair that fell in waves past her shoulders, and a smile that made him forget every rational thought in his head. But it wasn't just her looks. She was sharp, funny, passionate about her work, and kind in a way that seemed rare in his world of corporate meetings and profit margins. They had exchanged numbers, promising to keep in touch, both knowing it was more than a casual connection. The first call came the next day, then another. Soon they were talking every night, video chatting until one of them fell asleep. A month later, he flew to Charleston. The chemistry was undeniable. They spent a perfect weekend exploring her city, eating at hole-in-the-wall restaurants she loved, walking along the Battery, talking about everything and nothing. That weekend turned into a commitment. They would try. They would make it work. Long distance was hard, but people did it. They could do it too. Except now, sitting in the private conference room of her family's flagship hotel where she had pulled him after he arrived, both of them too desperate to wait until they were somewhere more private. She was telling him she couldn't. "Maren, look at me," Nathan said, standing and walking around the table to crouch in front of her chair. He took her hands in his, feeling them tremble. "I love you. We can figure this out." "How?" she asked, finally meeting his eyes. "You have an entire company in Seattle, hundreds of employees. Your whole life is there, and I have responsibilities here. My parents are counting on me to take over the business eventually. My sister just had a baby. My whole family is here. We're stuck, Nathan. We're stuck in 2 different cities, and I don't see a way out that doesn't involve one of us sacrificing everything." He opened his mouth to respond, but she continued, her words tumbling out in a rush. "I'm 27 years old, and I feel like I'm living half a life. I go through the motions at work. I smile at guests. I handle problems. I do everything I'm supposed to do. But then I go home to an empty apartment, and I wait for your call, and I count down the days until I can see you again. And when you're here, it's perfect. It's everything I want. But then you leave and I fall apart all over again. I can't keep doing this. It's killing me." Nathan's mind raced. He had built Forrester Manufacturing from the ground up, starting with a small workshop and a single contract 15 years ago when he was just 23. It was his baby, his pride, his identity. The company employed over 300 people now, with clients across the country. He had a board of directors, investors, suppliers who depended on him, employees with families who relied on their paychecks. But as he looked at Maren's tear-stained face, he realized something with crystal clarity. None of it mattered without her. "Give me a week," he said. She blinked. "What?" "Give me 1 week. Don't make any decisions. Don't end this. Just give me 7 days. Nathan, a week isn't going to change our geography." "Maybe not, but it might change everything else. Please, Maren, 1 week. If I can't come up with a solution that works for both of us, then we'll talk. But I'm not giving up on us without a fight. You mean too much to me." She searched his face, and he saw the war happening behind her eyes. Hope fighting with resignation. Love fighting with practicality. 1 week, she finally agreed, her voice barely audible. "But Nathan, please don't make this harder than it already is. Don't make promises you can't keep." He stood, pulling her up with him and into his arms. She buried her face in his chest, and he held her, breathing in the scent of her shampoo, feeling the way she fit perfectly against him. "I'm not making promises," he said against her hair. "I'm making plans." The flight back to Seattle was turbulent, but Nathan barely noticed. His mind was too busy working through logistics, possibilities, problems, and solutions. By the time he landed, he had made 3 decisions that would have seemed insane a week ago. The first call he made from his car was to his brother. "I need to see you tonight," Nathan said when Marcus answered. "It's important." "Everything okay?" Marcus asked, concern evident in his voice. "I'll explain when I see you." "Can you come to my place around 8? "Yeah, of course. Should I be worried?" "No, maybe. I don't know yet. Just come." Marcus Forrester was 3 years younger than Nathan, a successful architect who had designed several of their manufacturing facilities. He was also Nathan's best friend, the person who knew him better than anyone except maybe Maren. When Marcus arrived that evening, Nathan had already consumed half a pot of coffee and filled several pages of a legal pad with notes, numbers, and organizational charts. "You look terrible," Marcus said by way of greeting, dropping onto Nathan's couch and eyeing the mess on the coffee table. "What's going on? Is it Maren?" Nathan ran a hand through his hair. "She wants to end it. The distance is too much, and she's right. It is too much. I can see what it's doing to her, and it's killing me." "So what are you going to do? Something crazy." "How crazy?" Nathan sat down across from his brother, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "I'm going to move the company to Charleston." Marcus stared at him. "You're what?" "Not immediately. It'll take time. But I'm going to start the process. Find a facility there, begin transitioning key staff, set up a new headquarters. We can keep a satellite office here, but the main operations will move east." "Nathan, that's not crazy. That's impossible. You have contracts with local suppliers, relationships that took years to build, employees who have lives here. You can't just uproot an entire company." "Why not? Companies relocate all the time." "We can negotiate new supplier contracts. We can offer relocation packages to key employees. The ones who don't want to move, we can help them find new positions, or they can work remotely on certain projects. And honestly, being on the East Coast might open up new markets for us. There are potential clients there we have never been able to court properly because of the distance." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "You really love her. More than I knew was possible." "Does she know you're considering this?" "No. I told her to give me a week to find a solution. I don't want to promise her something until I know it's feasible." I need to talk to the board, to our key investors, to the management team. I need to run numbers and look at facilities and figure out if this is financially viable or if it's just a desperate fantasy. And if it's not viable, Nathan's jaw tightened, then I'll find another option. But I'm not losing her, Marcus. I can't. Marcus leaned back, shaking his head with a small smile. You know, for a guy who always said he would never let a relationship interfere with business, you're really going all in. I was wrong about a lot of things. I built this company because I wanted to prove I could, because I wanted financial security, because I wanted to matter. But what's the point of any of it if I end up alone? Maren makes me happy in a way that closing a big deal never has. She makes me want to be better, do better. She makes me laugh. She makes me think. She challenges me. And when I'm with her, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Then let's make it happen, Marcus said. What do you need from me? The next 3 days were a whirlwind. Nathan called an emergency board meeting, presenting his proposal with detailed financial projections, market analysis, and a phased transition plan. The room erupted in arguments. Some board members thought he was insane. Others saw the potential business opportunity in expanding their East Coast presence. The CFO had concerns about costs. The COO worried about logistics. But Nathan had done his homework, and he defended his position with the same intensity he brought to every business decision. In the end, they agreed to a feasibility study. It wasn't approval, but it was permission to explore the option seriously. Nathan would have 90 days to prove the move made business sense. If he could do that, the board would support the transition. 90 days felt like forever when he only had 4 more days left of the week he had promised Maren. But Nathan wasn't waiting for board approval for everything. On day 4, he made another call. This one was to a commercial real estate agent in Charleston he had found through extensive research. Within hours, she had sent him listings for manufacturing facilities. He spent the evening on video calls, taking virtual tours, asking questions, making notes. By midnight, he had narrowed it down to 3 possibilities and had scheduled in-person tours for the following week. On day 5, he met with his executive team. He laid out the situation honestly. The company might be relocating to Charleston. It wasn't definite yet, but it was a strong possibility. He wanted to know who would be willing to relocate if it happened, who would need to stay in Seattle, and what concerns they had. The reactions were mixed, but several key people expressed interest, particularly those who were originally from the East Coast or who had family there. His director of operations was actually excited about the possibility, mentioning his wife had been wanting to move closer to her aging parents in Virginia. By day 6, Nathan had rough numbers. The relocation would cost approximately $8 million over 2 years, including facility purchase and renovation, moving equipment, relocation packages for employees, and the costs of maintaining dual operations during the transition. But the potential new business on the East Coast could generate an additional $12 million in revenue annually within 3 years. It was risky, but it was sound business. On day 7, exactly 1 week after Maren had told him she couldn't do long distance anymore, Nathan boarded a plane back to Charleston. He hadn't told her he was coming. He wanted to show her, not tell her. When he knocked on her apartment door at 9 in the evening, she answered in pajamas, her hair in a messy bun, her eyes widening in shock. "Nathan, what are you doing here? You're not supposed to come until next weekend. Can I come in?" She stepped back, letting him enter, confusion written all over her face. "Is everything okay?" You sounded so busy this week when we talked. I figured you were drowning in work. I was, but not the kind of work you thought. He set down the bag he had been carrying and turned to face her fully. You said you couldn't do long distance. You cried. You told me it was killing you, and I saw that it was true. So I decided to solve the problem. Nathan, we talked about this. There's no solution that doesn't involve one of us giving up everything. You're wrong. There is a solution. I'm moving to Charleston. She stared at him like he had spoken in a foreign language. You're what? I'm moving the company. Not immediately. It'll take about 18 months to fully transition. But I've already started the process. The board approved a feasibility study, and I've proven the numbers work. We'll maintain a satellite office in Seattle, but the headquarters and main manufacturing facility will be here. I'm moving, Maren. I'm moving for you. You can't do that. Her voice was barely a whisper. You built that company from nothing. It's your whole life. No, he said, stepping closer to her. It was my whole life, past tense, until I met you. Now you're my life. The company is just what I do for a living, and I can do it from anywhere. It might actually be good for business. We will have better access to East Coast markets, new clients, new opportunities. But honestly, even if it wasn't good for business, I would still do it. Because nothing is worth losing you. Tears were streaming down her face now, but these were different from the tears she had cried a week ago. These were tears of disbelief, of hope, of overwhelming emotion. You're serious. You're actually serious. I've already looked at facilities. I have tours scheduled for this week. I've talked to my executive team, and several of them are willing to relocate. I've run the numbers 100 times. This is happening, Maren. Problem solved. She launched herself at him, and he caught her, holding her tight as she cried into his shoulder. He felt his own eyes burning, relief washing over him. He hadn't realized how terrified he had been that even this wouldn't be enough, that somehow he would still lose her. I can't believe you're doing this, she said, pulling back to look at him. I can't believe you would uproot your entire company for me. I would do anything for you. I thought you knew that. I knew you loved me. I didn't know you were completely insane, he laughed, wiping tears from her cheeks with his thumbs. Maybe I am. But if this is insanity, I don't want to be sane. I want to wake up in the same city as you. I want to come home to you every night. I want to build a life with you, not just steal weekends when we can. I want everything, Maren. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make that happen. She kissed him then, pouring every emotion into it, and he kissed her back with equal intensity. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, she was smiling through her tears. So, you want to help me look at manufacturing facilities this week? He asked. I want to do more than that. I want to help you however I can. My family knows a lot of people in Charleston. We can probably help with permits, connections, whatever you need. If you're doing this, if you're really doing this, then I'm all in. We're a team. We're definitely a team, he agreed. Now, can I stay here tonight? I'm exhausted, and I missed you desperately, and I don't want to go to a hotel. She took his hand, leading him toward her bedroom. You're never going to a hotel in this city again. This is your home now, or it will be. That night, wrapped in each other's arms, Nathan felt a peace he hadn't experienced in months. The long distance had been torture for him too, though he had tried to be strong for Maren. Every departure had felt like leaving part of himself behind. Every phone call had been a reminder of what he couldn't have, but now there was a light at the end of the tunnel. A plan. A future. The next morning, Maren called in sick to work, something she never did, and spent the day with Nathan touring facilities. The first one was too small. The second had structural issues that would cost too much to remediate. But the third one was perfect. It was a massive warehouse facility that had previously been used by a textile company, with high ceilings, good bones, excellent loading dock access, and enough space for both manufacturing and offices. It was in an industrial area north of downtown, with easy highway access and reasonable proximity to the port. "This is it," Nathan said, walking through the space, his mind already envisioning the layout. "This could really work." The real estate agent, a sharp woman named Paula who had clearly done her research on Forrester Manufacturing, smiled. "I thought you might like this one. It needs some renovations, but nothing structural, mostly cosmetic and updating the electrical for your equipment needs. The owner is motivated to sell. The textile company went bankrupt and the bank took possession. They want it off their books." "What are they asking?" When Paula named the price, Nathan's eyes widened. It was almost 30% less than he had budgeted for a facility this size. "That seems low." "Like I said, motivated seller, and honestly, this area is up and coming. In 5 years, this property will probably be worth double what you pay for it now. Charleston is growing fast, and manufacturing is coming back. You would be smart to move quickly on this if you're interested." Nathan looked at Maren, who was leaning against a concrete pillar, watching him with soft eyes. "What do you think?" "I think you have good instincts. If this feels right to you, then it probably is." He turned back to Paula. "I want to bring in an inspector, and I need to have my operations director fly out to look at it before I make an offer. But assuming those things go well, I'm very interested. I'll send you all the documentation and coordinate the inspector. Just let me know when your operations director can come out, and I will make sure we have access." As they left the facility and walked to Nathan's rental car, Maren slipped her hand into his. "You're really doing this. It's real. It's very real. Probably the most impulsive thing I have ever done, but it feels right. Actually, that's a lie. The most impulsive thing I have ever done was flying to Charleston for a weekend with a woman I had only spent 3 days with in person. But that worked out pretty well, so maybe impulsive is good sometimes." She laughed, the sound making his heart soar. This was the Maren he remembered from their first weekend together, before the distance had stolen her joy. "I'm glad you're impulsive sometimes. Otherwise, I might never have taken a chance on you." "Oh, you took a chance on me. I seem to remember it being the other way around. Please." "I saw you staring at me from across that trade show floor for 2 solid days before you finally got the courage to talk to me. I was being professional and strategic. I was planning my approach. You were terrified I would reject you." He pulled her close, kissing her temple. "Absolutely terrified. You were the most beautiful woman I had ever seen, and you seemed completely out of my league. Well, I'm glad you eventually convinced yourself otherwise. Best decision you ever made." "Second best," he corrected. "The best one is happening right now." Over the next few weeks, things moved at a pace that left Nathan breathless. His operations director loved the facility and confirmed it would work perfectly for their needs. The inspection came back with only minor issues. Nathan made an offer which was accepted within 24 hours. The paperwork was filed. Financing was arranged. Suddenly, Forrester Manufacturing owned a building in Charleston, South Carolina. The news went public, and Nathan's phone exploded with calls from media, from confused employees, from clients wanting reassurance that their orders would not be affected. He held town hall meetings with his staff, explaining the transition plan in detail. The move would happen in phases over 18 months. Key equipment would be relocated. Employees would be given generous relocation packages if they chose to move, or severance and job placement assistance if they chose to stay. The Seattle office would remain open, operating as a satellite location with a skeleton crew handling West Coast clients. Not everyone was happy. Nathan lost some good people who did not want to relocate, but he also discovered that more employees than he expected were excited about the change. Some had family on the East Coast. Others were ready for an adventure. A few were simply loyal to Nathan and the company, willing to follow wherever it led. Marcus decided to open a second office of his architecture firm in Charleston, partly to support his brother, partly because he saw opportunity in the growing southern market. Having his brother nearby made the transition easier for Nathan, gave him someone to talk through problems with, someone who understood the magnitude of what he was doing. But through it all, the center of Nathan's world was Maren. He flew back and forth between Seattle and Charleston for the first few months, but each trip to Charleston felt more like coming home and less like visiting. He started keeping clothes at her apartment, a toothbrush in her bathroom, his coffee in her cupboard. She gave him a key. He started calling her place home without thinking about it. 4 months after he first proposed the relocation, Nathan made another impulsive decision. He put his house in Seattle on the market and started looking for a place in Charleston. Not an apartment. A house. Something with a yard, with space, with room to grow. You don't have to do that yet, Maren said when he told her. The company move is going to take over a year. You could wait. I don't want to wait. I want to be here with you. The operations director can handle Seattle for a while. I need to be here to oversee the facility renovations anyway. It makes sense for me to move now, even if the company transition takes longer. She bit her lip, a gesture he had learned meant she was nervous about something. I've been thinking about something. What? My lease is up in 2 months. I could move out of this apartment. Okay, are you thinking of getting a different place? Maybe, or maybe I could move in with you if you wanted. If you were looking for a house anyway, maybe we could look together. Find something that works for both of us. Nathan's heart hammered in his chest. Living together. It was a big step, even though they had essentially been doing it anyway whenever he was in town. But this would be official, permanent. A clear statement that they were building a life together. I would love that, he said, pulling her into his arms. I would absolutely love that. Let's find our home. House hunting together revealed things about each other they had not known. Nathan discovered that Maren had strong opinions about kitchens and lighting. Maren learned that Nathan needed a home office with good natural light and space for all his books. They both wanted a yard but disagreed on the importance of a pool. She thought it was a waste of space and maintenance. He thought it would be nice for entertaining. They compromised on a beautiful craftsman-style house in a quiet neighborhood south of downtown, close enough to both the future manufacturing facility and to Maren's family hotel. It had 4 bedrooms, a renovated kitchen that made Maren's eyes light up, a perfect office space for Nathan, a large backyard with old oak trees, and no pool but space to add one later if they decided they wanted it. The moment they walked through the front door, they both knew it was right. This is home, Maren whispered, standing in the empty living room, sunlight streaming through the windows. This is home, Nathan agreed, wrapping his arms around her from behind, imagining all the memories they would make in the space. They closed on the house in early spring, nearly 6 months after the night Maren had cried and told him she could not do long distance anymore. Nathan had furniture shipped from Seattle and bought new pieces to fill the gaps. Maren brought her things from her apartment, and slowly the house transformed from an empty shell to a home that reflected both of them. Nathan's favorite room became his office, where he spent hours on video calls with Seattle, overseeing both the ongoing operations there and the transition plans. But every evening he closed the laptop and left work behind, something he had rarely done before Maren. They cooked dinner together, trying new recipes and laughing when things went wrong. They took walks through their neighborhood, getting to know the area. They hosted dinners for Maren's family, and Nathan got to know her parents, her sister Sarah and brother-in-law Tom, her nephew who was now almost a year old and absolutely fearless. Maren's parents, Robert and Catherine Walsh, were cautious at first. They had seen their daughter hurting during the long-distance relationship, and they were wary of Nathan despite his obvious devotion to her. But slowly, they warmed to him. He showed up for family dinners. He asked Robert about the hotel business and actually listened to the answers. He played with baby James until the kid fell asleep on his shoulder. He proved through actions, not words, that he was serious about their daughter. One evening, about 8 months after Nathan had first told Maren he was moving the company, Robert asked him to take a walk. They strolled through the neighborhood as the sun set, neither speaking for several minutes. "I owe you an apology," Robert finally said. "For what?" "For doubting you. When Maren first told us she was dating someone in Seattle, Catherine and I were worried. Long distance rarely works, especially at their age when they should be building a life, not just stealing moments. And when you announced you were moving your company here, I thought you were either crazy or it was some grand gesture that would fall apart when reality set in. But you did it. You're actually doing it. I drove by that facility last week. The renovations are incredible. I've heard through business connections that you're already courting several major East Coast clients. And more importantly, I see how you look at my daughter. I see how happy she is. I haven't seen her this happy in years, maybe ever. You kept your promises. That's rare in my experience." Nathan felt a weight lift off his chest that he had not fully realized he had been carrying. "I love her, Robert. I would move mountains for her if that's what it took." "Relocating a company was easy in comparison," Robert laughed. "Somehow I doubt that, but I appreciate the sentiment." He paused, then added, "I also appreciate that you haven't rushed things. You could have proposed by now. I'm sure you've thought about it, but you're letting the relationship breathe, letting her adjust to having you here permanently. That shows maturity." Nathan smiled but did not respond. The truth was, he had bought a ring 3 months ago. It was sitting in his sock drawer, waiting for the right moment. He was not rushing, but he was absolutely planning. He wanted Maren to be his wife. He just wanted to make sure the timing was perfect. The right moment came in October, nearly a year after their crisis point. The facility renovations were complete. The first phase of equipment was being installed. Employees were beginning to arrive in Charleston, settling into new homes, new lives. The company transition was happening on schedule, and the financial projections were exceeding expectations. Nathan had been working brutal hours, overseeing every detail of the transition. Maren had been patient, supportive, picking up the slack at home, understanding that this phase was temporary but necessary. But Nathan knew he had been neglecting her, and he wanted to do something special. He planned an entire day. He took off work, something he almost never did. He arranged for Maren to have the day off as well, calling her mother to conspire about making it happen. He packed a picnic basket with all her favorite foods. He drove them out to Folly Beach, where they spent the day walking the sand, swimming in the ocean, talking about everything except work. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple, Nathan spread a blanket on the beach and pulled out the picnic. They ate and laughed and watched the waves, and Nathan felt a certainty settle over him that this was the moment. "Maren," he said, taking her hand. "Do you remember a year ago when you told me you couldn't do long distance?" Her expression softened. "Of course I remember. It was one of the worst days of my life. I thought I was losing you." "I remember feeling terrified. Not because I didn't think I could find a solution, but because I was afraid you would not believe me when I said I would. I was afraid you would think it was impossible and you would end things before I had a chance to prove otherwise." "I almost did," she admitted. "If you hadn't asked for that week, I probably would have. I was so tired of hurting." "I know, and I never want you to hurt like that again. This year has been crazy, but it has also been the best year of my life. Coming home to you every night, building a life with you, making this city our city, it has all been better than I imagined. And I don't want it to stop. I want decades of this. I want forever." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the ring box, watching her eyes go wide with shock and joy. "Maren Walsh, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. You make me laugh, you challenge me, you support me, and you love me even when I'm working too hard and forgetting to take care of myself. I want to spend the rest of my life making you as happy as you make me. Will you marry me?" Tears were streaming down her face as she nodded emphatically. "Yes, yes, absolutely yes. 1,000 times yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, a simple but elegant diamond solitaire that caught the fading sunlight. Then he kissed her as the waves crashed behind them, and the last rays of sun dipped below the horizon. It felt like the end of one chapter and the beginning of another, like everything had led to this perfect moment. They stayed on the beach until the stars came out, talking about the future, about wedding plans, about the life they wanted to build together. Maren wanted a medium-sized wedding, something intimate with family and close friends. Nathan did not care about the details as long as she was happy. They debated timing. She wanted to wait until the company transition was fully complete, so Nathan was not stressed and distracted. He wanted to get married tomorrow because waiting felt impossible now that he had asked. They compromised on the following summer, which gave them about 8 months to plan. It also meant the Seattle office would be fully transitioned to satellite status, and Nathan would be completely based in Charleston. It felt right, symbolic even. They would start their marriage with everything settled, their roots firmly planted in the city they had chosen together. The engagement brought a flurry of activity. Maren's mother went into full wedding planning mode, armed with binders and spreadsheets and vendor lists. Marcus immediately offered his services as best man and started planning what he promised would be an epic bachelor party. Maren's sister Sarah took on maid of honor duties with enthusiasm, helping Maren find the perfect dress and coordinating bridesmaids. Through it all, Nathan continued overseeing the final stages of the company relocation. It was exhausting but exhilarating. The Charleston facility officially opened in December, a full year after Nathan had first told Maren he was moving. They held a grand opening event, inviting clients, local business leaders, city officials, and all their employees. It was a celebration of everything they had accomplished, a statement that Forrester Manufacturing was now a Charleston company. Maren stood by his side during the opening, watching him give a speech about new beginnings and taking chances and building something lasting. She had heard him give dozens of speeches over the past year, but this one felt different. This one was about more than business. It was about love, about sacrifice, about choosing what mattered most. When the event ended and the last guests had left, Nathan found her in the empty lobby of the new facility. She was looking at the wall where they had mounted the company's history, a timeline of growth from a small workshop to a major manufacturer. "You did it," she said, slipping her hand into his. "You actually did it. You moved an entire company across the country." "We did it," he corrected. "I could not have done this without you. You kept me sane. You reminded me why I was doing this when things got hard. You celebrated every small victory with me. This is as much yours as it is mine. I think you are giving me too much credit. This was all you. No, none of this would exist if you had not cried and told me you could not do long distance. That moment, as painful as it was the push I needed to reevaluate everything. Before you, I probably would have kept doing the same thing forever, building the company bigger and bigger, chasing success for its own sake. You made me realize that success does not mean anything if you are alone. You taught me what actually matters." She turned to face him fully, reaching up to cup his face in her hands. "I love you. More than I ever thought I could love anyone, and I cannot wait to marry you." "6 more months," he said, kissing her softly. "I can make it 6 more months. You moved a company in 12 months. 6 months will be easy." But the 6 months flew by in a blur of wedding preparations, work demands, and the daily joy of their life together. They picked a venue, a historic plantation house outside Charleston with beautiful gardens and an oak-lined avenue perfect for photos. They chose a caterer, a band, a florist. They sent invitations and received RSVPs from friends and family scattered across the country. Nathan's parents, who had retired to Arizona, were thrilled to come. His handful of close friends from college and business all accepted enthusiastically. But more than the wedding planning, those 6 months were filled with small, beautiful moments. Cooking breakfast on lazy Sunday mornings, walking through their neighborhood in the evenings, planning which plants to add to their garden, hosting dinner parties for their growing circle of friends in Charleston, watching Maren's nephew take his first steps in their living room, building a life together, piece by piece, moment by moment. When their wedding day arrived in late June, Nathan woke up in Marcus's guest room, having been banished from his own house the night before by wedding tradition. He was nervous, which surprised him. He had stood in front of hundreds of people giving presentations, had negotiated multi-million-dollar deals, had made decisions that affected hundreds of employees. But the thought of standing at an altar waiting for Maren made his hands shake. "You're going to be fine," Marcus said, helping him with his tie. "You have been waiting for this day for months. You are going to watch her walk down that aisle, and you are going to know you made all the right choices. I know, I just want everything to be perfect for her. It will be. Because you are there, and she loves you. That is all that matters." The ceremony was held in the garden at golden hour when the light was soft and perfect. Nathan stood at the altar with Marcus beside him, watching as Maren's bridesmaids walked down the aisle. Then the music changed, and everyone stood, and Maren appeared on her father's arm. She was breathtaking. Her dress was simple and elegant, her hair falling in soft waves, her smile radiant as her eyes found his. Nathan felt his throat tighten with emotion. This was real. This incredible woman was choosing him, committing her life to his. The ceremony was a blur. He heard himself say his vows, heard Maren's voice shaking with emotion as she said hers. He slipped the wedding band onto her finger and she did the same for him. The officiant pronounced them husband and wife. He kissed her, and the guests cheered, and nothing had ever felt more right. The reception was everything they had hoped for. The food was delicious. The band was fantastic. Their first dance was to a song that had been playing in the bar the night they met, a nostalgic choice that made them both laugh. Maren's father gave a touching speech about gaining a son and watching his daughter find true happiness. Marcus told embarrassing stories about Nathan's college days that made everyone laugh and made Nathan threaten to fire him, which only made people laugh harder. But the best moment came late in the evening, when Nathan and Maren snuck away from the reception for a few minutes alone. They walked through the gardens, hand in hand, Maren's train dragging through the grass, neither of them caring. "We did it," she said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "We are married. Best decision I ever made. I thought moving your company was the best decision you ever made. That was the second best decision. Marrying you is the best." She laughed, the sound making his heart swell. "I love you. I love our life. I love that you were crazy enough to move across the country for me. I would do it again in a heartbeat." "Actually, that is a lie. I would never want to do that again. It was exhausting, but I would if I had to." "Well, let us hope you never have to. I am quite happy with where we are now." They stood in the garden as the sun set and the lights came on and the sounds of the reception drifted over to them. They were married. They were home. They had built something real and lasting from what could have been an impossible situation. The honeymoon was 2 weeks in Italy, a trip they had planned for months. They explored Rome, Florence, Venice, eating incredible food, seeing amazing art, and enjoying the freedom of having no responsibilities except enjoying each other's company. Nathan turned off his work phone, leaving the company in his operations director's capable hands. Maren did the same, trusting her assistant manager to handle anything that came up. It was blissful, romantic, and exactly what they needed. They talked about the future, about what they wanted from life. Maren admitted she had been thinking about starting her own boutique hotel, rather than just taking over the family business. She loved what her parents had built, but she wanted to create something that was uniquely hers. Nathan encouraged her, offering to help however he could, excited to see her pursue her own dreams. He told her he was thinking about stepping back from day-to-day operations eventually, hiring a CEO to run Forrester Manufacturing, while he moved into more of a chairman role. He loved the business, but he did not want it to consume his entire life anymore. He wanted time for travel, for hobbies, for the family he hoped they would have someday. Which led to the conversation about children. They both wanted kids, though they were not in a rush. They wanted to enjoy being married for a while, to settle fully into their life together. But yes, eventually, they wanted to fill their house with laughter and chaos and love. They returned from their honeymoon tanned and relaxed and more in love than ever. Real life was waiting for them, but it felt manageable now. They had weathered the storm of long distance, of major life changes, of building a new life in a new city. Whatever came next, they would handle it together. The next few years unfolded with a beautiful rhythm. Forrester Manufacturing thrived in Charleston, exceeding even Nathan's most optimistic projections. The company won several major contracts with clients who appreciated the East Coast location and the quality of their work. Employee satisfaction was high. The gamble had paid off in every measurable way. Maren left the family hotel business 3 years after their wedding and opened her own boutique property in downtown Charleston. It was smaller than her family's hotels, only 25 rooms, but each one was uniquely designed with custom furnishings from Forrester Manufacturing. It became a destination for travelers looking for something special, intimate, and luxurious. She poured her heart into every detail, and it showed. Within a year, she had a waiting list for reservations. Nathan did eventually hire a CEO for the manufacturing company, transitioning into a chairman role that allowed him to focus on strategy and growth while leaving daily operations to someone else. It was liberating. He had more time for Maren, for travel, for the life they had built. And 4 years after their wedding, they welcomed their first child, a daughter they named Claire. She had Nathan's dark hair and Maren's warm brown eyes, and she owned their hearts from the moment she was born. Nathan had thought he understood love before, but holding his daughter for the first time expanded his capacity for it in ways he could not have imagined. Watching Maren become a mother was incredible. She was patient, loving, fiercely protective, and completely natural at it. She took maternity leave from her hotel, leaving it in her assistant manager's hands, and devoted herself to their daughter for those precious first months. Nathan adjusted his schedule to be home more, wanting to be present for every moment he could. Their house filled with baby gear, toys, and laughter. Family dinners with Maren's parents and sister became even more frequent, as everyone wanted to spend time with Claire. Marcus, who had gotten married himself 2 years prior, was already planning playdates between Claire and his expected child. 2 years after Claire was born, they had a son, Owen. He was loud from day one, with strong opinions about everything and his father's stubborn streak. Their family felt complete. The house that had once seemed too big now felt perfect, filled with the sounds of children playing, of bedtime stories, of family breakfasts on weekend mornings. Nathan sometimes thought back to that conference room where Maren had cried and told him she could not do long distance. It felt like a lifetime ago, like different people. But he was grateful for that moment. It had forced him to examine his priorities, to make choices he might never have made otherwise. He had never regretted moving the company, not once. Not when it was difficult, not when it was expensive, not when things went wrong. Because every day he got to come home to Maren. He got to build a life with her, to raise their children together, to create memories and traditions and a foundation that felt unshakable. One evening, when Claire was 7 and Owen was 5, the family was sitting around the dinner table. It was a chaotic scene, with Owen refusing to eat his vegetables and Claire telling elaborate stories about her day at school. Maren was trying to negotiate with Owen while also listening to Claire, and Nathan was just watching it all, feeling overwhelmingly grateful. "Daddy," Claire said, turning her attention to him. "My teacher said you moved your whole company to be with Mommy. Is that true?" Nathan glanced at Maren, who raised her eyebrows with a smile. They had told the kids the story before, but apparently it was making the rounds at Claire's school now. "It is true," Nathan confirmed. "That is so romantic," Claire said with a dreamy sigh that made both parents laugh. "It was necessary," Nathan corrected gently. "Mommy and I loved each other, but we lived in different cities. It was making us both very sad, so I figured out a way to fix the problem." "By moving your whole company," Claire said, clearly impressed. "By moving my whole company," he agreed. "I am going to tell everyone at school that my daddy is a superhero," Claire announced. "I am not a superhero, sweetheart. I just loved your mommy very much." Owen, who had been mostly ignoring the conversation in favor of pushing peas around his plate, suddenly piped up. "I think Daddy is a superhero." "Why is that, buddy?" Nathan asked. "Because superheroes solve problems, and you solved a problem, so you are a superhero." Maren was laughing now, her eyes sparkling with amusement and love. "Your logic is sound, Owen." "I think Daddy is a superhero too." Nathan shook his head, but he was smiling. "If I am a superhero, it is only because Mommy made me want to be one. She is the reason for everything good in my life." "That is very romantic, Daddy," Claire said approvingly. After dinner, after the kids were bathed and in bed, after stories were read and goodnights were said, Nathan and Maren collapsed on the couch together. She curled into his side and he wrapped his arm around her, both of them exhausted but content. 7 years, Maren said softly. "Can you believe it has been 7 years since you moved here? Sometimes it feels like yesterday, sometimes it feels like forever, but it always feels right. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had not done it? If you had said it was impossible and we had broken up?" Nathan was quiet for a moment, considering. "I try not to think about it because it makes me sick to my stomach. I cannot imagine my life without you, without the kids, without all of this. It would have been a terrible mistake to let you go. I would have regretted it forever," Maren admitted. "Even if I had eventually met someone else, even if I had been happy, there would always have been a part of me wondering what could have been with you." "Well, lucky for both of us, we do not have to wonder, we get to live it." She tilted her head up to kiss him softly. "Best problem solution ever." "Agreed. Although I am still not sure I am a superhero." "You are to me. You always will be." Years continued to pass, bringing new challenges and new joys. The kids grew, the business evolved, and Nathan and Maren adapted to each stage of life together. There were hard times, of course. Owen broke his arm falling from a tree. Claire struggled with anxiety in middle school. The company faced a major supply chain issue that took months to resolve. Maren's father had a health scare that brought the whole family together in worry and prayer. But through it all, Nathan and Maren had each other. They had built a foundation strong enough to weather any storm. They had chosen each other every single day since that moment when Maren had cried and told him she could not do long distance anymore. And every day, Nathan was grateful that he had been brave enough or crazy enough to come up with a solution. On their 15th wedding anniversary, Nathan surprised Maren with a trip back to Denver, to the city where they had first met. They stayed at the same hotel, walked the same streets they had walked that first night, and ended up at the same bar where they had first talked until 3 in the morning. "Do you remember what we talked about that night?" Maren asked, sipping wine at the same table they had shared 15 years before. "Everything," Nathan said. "We talked about everything. Our families, our jobs, our dreams, our fears. I remember thinking I had never connected with someone so quickly or so deeply. I remember going back to my hotel room that night and immediately calling Sarah to tell her I had met someone special. She thought I was crazy, said you could not really know someone after one conversation, but I knew, I just knew. So did I. That is why the long-distance thing was so hard. Because I knew you were it for me, and the distance felt like this massive obstacle that was preventing us from having what we were supposed to have." "And then you moved a company," Maren said, shaking her head with a smile. "Still crazy. Still the most romantic thing anyone has ever done." "Still the best decision I ever made," Nathan countered. They stayed in Denver for a long weekend, reliving memories and creating new ones. But both of them were eager to get home, to their kids, to their life in Charleston. Because as special as Denver was for them, it was not home. Home was the life they had built together, the family they had created, the love that had only grown stronger with time. When they returned, Claire and Owen had made them an anniversary banner and convinced their grandparents to help them bake a lopsided cake. It was perfect in its imperfection, a representation of their beautifully chaotic life. "Thank you for everything," Maren said that night after the kids were asleep. They were in bed, her head on his chest, his fingers running through her hair. "Thank you for being crazy enough to move for me. Thank you for building this life with me. Thank you for every single day." "You never have to thank me for any of that," Nathan said softly. "Loving you is the easiest thing I have ever done. Everything else was just logistics." She laughed, the sound vibrating against his chest. "Only you would call moving an entire company just logistics." "Fine, very complicated logistics, but still worth it. 1,000 times worth it." "I love you. I love you too, forever." And that was the truth of it. When Maren had cried and said she could not do long distance, Nathan had made a choice. He had chosen her over convenience, over the status quo, over what seemed reasonable or logical. He had solved the problem in the most dramatic way possible, because the alternative, losing her, was unthinkable. It had not been easy. Moving a company across the country was complex, expensive, and risky. But it had worked. The gamble had paid off not just in business success, but in happiness, in family, in a lifetime of love with the woman who made everything worthwhile. Years later, when Claire was planning her own wedding and asking for advice, Nathan told her the same thing he had lived by since that fateful day. When you find the person who makes your life better just by being in it, you do whatever it takes to keep them. You make sacrifices. You take risks. You solve problems, no matter how impossible they seem. Because love is not about grand gestures, even though sometimes grand gestures are necessary. Love is about choosing that person every single day and being willing to build a life around that choice. Claire had hugged him tightly, understanding in her eyes. She had grown up watching her parents model that kind of love, that kind of commitment. It was her foundation, her example of what a partnership should be. And as Nathan watched his daughter start her own journey, as he held Maren's hand and felt the familiar warmth of her presence beside him, he knew that every choice he had made led him exactly where he was supposed to be. Problem solved indeed. Problem solved, and a lifetime of love gained in return.